From the moment Sabotage Studios announced its sophomore outing, Sea of Stars, I felt like we had something special on our hands. So often we see games that try to recapture the magic of older RPGs. And while many scratch that itch, I've never seen one that also manages to do what titles like Chrono Trigger accomplished. That is, pushing the genre forward with a firm understanding of what to leave behind in the past. Sea of Stars is unquestionably that game, but it's so much more than just that. To merely compare it to the classics like Chrono Trigger and Super Mario RPG would be a detriment to the mesmerizing and beautiful adventure Sabotage Studios has created here. It's a game that understands the trappings of the RPG genre, and that core philosophy drives its every move. While the game clearly wears its emotions on its sleeves, it also dares to challenge them, resulting in a spellbinding masterpiece that will hold you in its world and remind you why you fell in love with RPGs in the first place. Right from the start, it's clear that Sea of Stars knows every cliché and trope in the book, and it will make you very aware that it knows. Rather than let its meta commentary come across as gimmicky, however, it presents a world that stands on its own entirely, with Sabotage's penchant for tongue-in-cheek humor serving as icing on an already delicious cake. You'll laugh as much as you did in The Messenger, but you may also be surprised by how entrapped this second game makes you feel. I don't want to say too much about the story, but I also think it would be a mistake to merely talk about the plot. Sea of Stars is a game that's more about the world than what's happening in the world. There are highlights, make no mistake, but I found the most significant strength comes from the game's wildly imaginative lore. I don't know a better compliment I can give than to say that the game at no point in its entire 40-hour run wastes any material. With each new level you step into, you're treated to a new fantastical element about the way that this world works. Whether that be a town of mole men who have carved a mountain to use the wind to play a song that lulls a giant sky serpent to sleep, or the endless conflict between a former pirate captain seeking revenge upon his lover as she is doomed to sail his ghost ship for eternity, I guarantee that you will be enthralled by this wacky and wonderful world Sabotage has created. You are the children of the solstice, Valir and Zale, and your mission is to utilize the lunar eclipse in order to defeat the Dwellers, minions of the mighty antagonist, the Fleshmancer. If all that sounds wild, trust me, you've seen nothing yet. While Sea of Stars may not outdo your absolute favorite RPGs with its plot developments, the mythology on display here is so enthralling that it props everything else up. It's as if the developers sat in a room and contemplated for days over the craziest and most imaginative ideas they could think of, and then they found a way to logically fit them into the world. This culminates in the optional, yet I would argue, mandatory campfire story element. This element allows players to seek out relics in the ocean-filled land that the world's last historian, Teeks, can interpret to share for its history. I cannot recommend enough that players take the time to listen to every one of these. The ideas here are just so much fun and fascinating to learn about. I've really fallen in love with this world. It's the small moments, such as sitting by the warm fireplace as the tavern plays the game's soundtrack, that make this a special experience. As for the main story itself, it's divided chiefly into individual sub-stories that move the ultimate plot forward. Each presents you with new ideas and a slew of fantastic new environments, each different from the last. I won't say much about the story, but I'd bet money that players will fall in love with the pure of heart and loyal Garl, the warrior cook and longtime friend of Valir and Zale. Garl, the true main character, takes his friends on a quest to defeat the last of the Dwellers and discover the true history of the Fleshmancer and his counterpart, the enigmatic immortal alchemist. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? You're gonna love it. Of course, Sea of Stars is indeed a prequel to The Messenger, that has to be said, and I was surprised by how true this ends up being. I expected nothing more than a few cheeky references, but while players will not have to play The Messenger to understand what's happening in Sea of Stars, those who have experienced Sabotage's premiere project, and if you like platformers, boy should you, will be significantly rewarded here. And I'm saying absolutely nothing more about that. As I've mentioned before, this is a game that fully believes and commits to its vision. And because of that, I don't remember the last time I've seen an RPG that leaves no dead air whatsoever. Aside from, well, Chrono Trigger. There are moments when you might feel like you're on a fetch quest, but not a single mechanic or side element in Sea of Stars, such as the addictive fishing minigame, feels squandered. Every aspect feels carefully put together with love and conviction, and that couldn't be more true than with the game's combat. The best way to describe Sea of Stars' gameplay is focused. Each mechanic in combat and exploration is so clearly made to bounce off of one another. In a way, I must admit, even the greatest RPGs struggle to achieve. Take cooking, for example. I was pleasantly surprised to find just how useful taking a break from the action to whip up a tasty treat was. The game is clever by capping items off at 10, meaning that the days of hoarding hundreds of potions for no reason just to dump them all on the final boss are long gone. And because of such a small cap, and because healing techniques cost so much MP, using items feels like a genuine intention rather than a side mechanic. With no random encounters to speak of, and one heck of a satisfying grappling hook on hand to initiate battles with style, combat begins right there on the screen with no transitions, in full Chrono Trigger fashion. Not one to settle for replicating the greatest game of all time. However, Sea of Stars adopts another favorite of mine, Mario RPG, with timed hits, implemented in nearly every combat action. Correctly timing your strikes results in a beautiful sense of accomplishment for going the extra mile. You don't have to utilize timed hits, but you will be rewarded for doing so. The way combat works is basically regular attacks generate MP and live mana orbs. Mana orbs power up your moves and imbue them with the character's associated element. This makes it so that your MP stat isn't just a resource you use and refill with an item or a tent. It's a constant balancing act of trying to keep it sufficiently surplus at the proper moments. Skills often add the bonus trait of AoE as well, and each is balanced beautifully so that players won't feel the need to just spam one over and over. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten sick of RPGs that make me do that. By hitting, especially with proper timing, attacks or magic attacks, the party builds up its combo meter. And then, 2 party members can initiate the dazzling, powerful Chrono Trigger style dual attacks with each combo point. You'll take time utilizing each of these mechanics to engage in combat's bread and butter, the lock system. As an enemy begins casting a powerful move, symbols corresponding to attack and element types will appear above them, and by hitting the enemy with the respective symbol, a lock will break. Break all the locks to prevent the enemy from using its move altogether. But, brilliantly enough, the game is designed so that players don't have to feel bad for missing the chance to break all of an enemy's locks, because each lock broken will still weaken that enemy. Those live mana orbs I talked about add a strategic element to the game by counteracting the locks. I often found myself strategizing whether to use them swiftly or save one up for one large attack at the right moment. Should I break all the locks on one enemy I have trouble timing blocks for? Or should I break multiple locks on several enemies to weaken each of their hits? These are the decisions I loved making during combat. Every battle in Sea of Stars is its own dance, forcing you to figure out the best rhythm and strategy. There is nothing that goes without purpose here. While combat is simple and easy to understand, each of these mechanics builds an incredible feedback loop in which each piece synergizes with another. You won't find yourself spamming the same move repeatedly or mashing the attack button to breeze through a battle. It's not that kind of game. If I do have one negative to mention here, however, it would have to be the game's boss battles. They're some of the most impressive and imaginative I've seen visually, but, and this was very surprising to me, most of them are actually relatively easy. The first half of the game will challenge you well enough, and enemy encounters remain dangerous till the credits roll, but boss battles take a hit in the second half of the game. I don't know, maybe it's because the game revolves so strongly around preparing for an enemy to attack that when you're given ample time to do so, and it's just a single enemy you're facing, it doesn't matter how vicious they're looking, you're gonna punish it pretty quickly and easily. This is especially true if you use Sarai's slightly overpowered Disorient ability, a mandatory move in combat, trust me on that one. Bosses did very little damage to me toward the end of the game, and I found I could pretty easily stop them from using most of their strongest moves. But it does have to be mentioned that I did explore every nook and cranny of this game, and as it rewards exploration, I was pretty decked out with some amazing accessories toward the end. You can decide whether that's a negative statement on the game's boss battles or praise for it rewarding exploration. Sea of Stars will tickle your brain with its wild lore. It'll force you to stay engaged with its amazing combat, and it won't make you feel like a single mechanic is wasted. But without any doubt, the greatest strength of this masterpiece is its atmosphere. I may have never played any game that has enthralled me as much as this one has in its ambiance. The foliage blows in the wind, the birds chirp in the background, and the sound of rushing waves and waterfalls soothe you. The world is just so alive. The environments are breathtaking, with the best sprite work I think I have ever seen. Utilizing a dynamic day and night system, each has its own feel and personality. The moorlands, for example, emit a melancholic sense as they're buried in historic architecture, while the coral cascades are bright and tranquil, as if the characters get a brief vacation. My personal favorite has to be Wraith Island, the spooky domain of Romaya the Necromancer, and the poor cursed town of Lucent. If it sounds like there's variety here, I assure you that not one environment looks the same. I don't remember the last time I played an RPG that didn't once recycle its elements. These were my favorite moments in Sea of Stars. Standing by a rushing waterfall, feeling as though I had to walk more slowly in the chilling mansion, or feeling the tension ease away as I mingle with the villagers of Mirth, a quiet and peaceful snowy refuge. This game dazzled me to no end. It's not just a world you can see, but one you can touch, if that makes sense. Nearly every surface is also climbable, which makes for some terrifically designed dungeon crawling and exploration. You won't find any flat plains and hallways here. And the music. Dear sweet God, the music. I'm sorry, pardon my language here, but holy freaking hell, the music. It may sound redundant, but this is yet another example of how this game feels so carefully put together with love. Every track elicits a different tone, with the incredible Eric W. Brown somehow outdoing his already toe-tapping masterpiece of a soundtrack in The Messenger. I can't wait to find out which ones become fan favorites, though I do have my suspicions. Sea of Stars, quite simply, has one of the best soundtracks I have ever heard. I don't think it's hyperbole to say that it stands right there with some of the all-time greats. And yes, it has to be said that the magician himself, Yasunori Mitsuda, also lends some tracks to the game. And, I'm not spoiling those, but be on the lookout for his mansion and sailing theme. Especially the mansion theme, oh my gosh, it's still under my skin. Sea of Stars is all about these moments. Little touches in games can be so often overlooked, but if anything, this is a game that's almost entirely about them. You'll sit by the cozy campfire with your friends as Teeks reads you a story and you hear the crackling and sizzling of the cooking pot. You'll wind down with a game of wheels as the tavern band supplements it with your favorite track. Wheels is a particular favorite element of mine. I expect that Gwent and Triple Triad enthusiasts will really get a kick out of this. To be honest, I'd be shocked if people don't fall in love with this world. It's one of my new favorites. How do I put this? Picture your favorite RPG from the past. Now imagine that every limitation it faced at the time has been removed. That is Sea of Stars. It's a game that doesn't just fully understand why those games worked, it understands why others don't. With a combat system that considers every mechanic and bounces them off one another perfectly, a world you can not just see but touch, and a finer attention to detail and smaller touches than most, it moves the genre forward in ways I've never seen. This is a game unquestionably made with love. It combines the lucid charm of the old with the innovation and understanding of the new to create an experience that will stick with you for a long time. It's not perfect, but I would argue that if anything, we have something that's close to another level of Chrono Trigger excellence. This is an enchanting masterpiece that you won't forget.